Yeah, this is a fantastic turnout. Thank you all for coming. That's great. I better introduce myself. I'm Jenny McGillivray, and I've done a lot of work for Urban Roots and developing community gardens across the south side of Glasgow, working in schools to teach gardening and environmental activities, and also work with Propagate, which is a small group of freelancers, and we help people to set up growing spaces, community gardens, and food projects and sustainable food systems. And that now spans Glasgow, Dumfries and Galloway, and Mull. So today I'm going to cover a little bit about worms and soil and worm farms, and then I'm going to demonstrate over there what I've built. And mine is it can be obviously adapted to any size of space, even very small spaces, but I hear that most of you have allotments, so you're not dealing with a patio or no growing space, so that's good. Right, I'm just going to share my screen now. So the instructions for the worm farm that I'm going to show you today were developed by Propagate, and they're up on the website. If you go to the Propagate website, which I'll put a link to in the chat, and then online resources and educational resources, and there's guides, there's a growing toolkit on there, and it's documents about different aspects of growing. So if we go to soil and compost, then there, making a DIY wormery. So that's what I've used today. It's just 2 pages, do-it-yourself wormery. And we've also made a lot of videos which are on our YouTube channel, which I think we'll email you links to afterwards. So start with some incredible soil facts. Soil is a very precious resource, and it's in decline. It's being degraded, unfortunately. So each year we lose 24 billion tons of fertile soil. That's just due to erosion. So there's other threats to soil as well, such as intensive farming, but this is just due to erosion. So for every person here, that's 3.4 tons lost. So anything we can do to help soil and increase the amount of soil in the land that we have is helping the planet. Soil is also a great carbon store. So around the world, soils store more than 4,000 billion tons of carbon, which is more than forests and the amount of carbon that's stored in the atmosphere combined. So lots of people are saying, you know, plant 1 billion trees or whatever to help the climate. But also we need to preserve the soil and increase the amount of soil that we have. And then this is a fact that I've seen a lot, but I can't find a source for it, so I'm not sure how true it is. 1 teaspoon of soil contains more living organisms than there are people in the world. Another source I saw said 100 million and 1 billion bacteria, so not quite as much people as there are in the world. But the point being that soil is actually absolutely teeming with life and microorganisms, bacteria, and all sorts of beasties. One of the most important creatures that helps build the soil is the earthworm. Lumbricus terrestris. And this is the big fat chunky worm that you see in the garden, and it's a burrower. So it makes holes through the soil, and it helps water and air. It helps aerate the soil, it helps dig over the soil, and it helps till the soil better than any gardener, contrary to a lot of traditional gardening wisdom. The worms can actually do a lot of the digging for us in the garden. Yes, so they burrow deep down into the soil, and they can live in compost heaps as well, sort of deeper down, and they help feed wildlife in the garden as well. So as we saw, some soils can be quite depleted in worms, and there may be a number of reasons for that, but you can actually buy in earthworms online. Obviously the conditions need to be right so they don't all die but if you do need to replenish some good soil, you can buy earthworms in bulk online. And this is the worm we're going to deal with today in our worm farms. There's a number of different types. They're sometimes called tiger worms because they've got stripes on them, and they're smaller than the earthworm, and they're surface feeders. So they stay on the surface, and they bring down organic matter, and well, they eat the organic matter and they stay sort of on the surface. The earthworms that pull down the organic matter and take the nutrients down in deep into the soil. But these little guys, they reproduce very quickly. They can lay an egg once every 10 days, and they grow very quickly, and they're very efficient at munching through as much as their own body weight in food every day. So if you think, if you're starting off with a certain weight of worms, that's roughly the amount of food or organic matter that you can feed them every day. Obviously that will change as they reproduce and they get more. You can gradually add more food and feed them more. They also never sleep, so they're producing compost all the time. And they do need oxygen. This is an aerobic digestion process. So we need to make sure they've got air holes and ventilation in the worm farm. And this is the, you can buy worm farms, and they can cost from between 50 to 150 pounds. These are like small compact ones that could fit in your kitchen or in a small patio. And they're very basic design, just with 2 or 3 layers and a tap. And some of them, they come with the worms, they come with bedding and things like that, but they're very simple really, and we can make them ourselves. And this is the basic structure of a worm farm. This one has 3 layers. The top layer will be for the bedding and the food and the worms to live in, and the middle layer is for the compost, the worm castings to collect in, and the bottom layer will be for the liquid to drain away into. So basically what the worms are doing in a worm farm is eating up organic matter and turning it into poo or worm castings, which is a great soil conditioner, and wee, which is the worm tea and is a great liquid feed for plants. And then there's a tap at the bottom to drain off the liquid so you can use it. There are bigger designs. Ian mentioned a water tank. They'll basically expand to the container that you have. They'll just keep reproducing. So you can have larger, I'm not sure about commercial scale, but certainly I've seen some very successful bathtub worm farms where you have the same idea, and the liquid drains out of the drain in the bathtub. So that can work very well as well. Right, so I'm just going to stop sharing. Now let's go and have a look at some worms. Okay, so this is the worm farm that's been, well, it's been outside most of the winter, and even though we've had very cold weather, the worms have survived. They've not been optimum, so they've not been producing a lot of worm castings, because the ideal temperature is between 10 and 30 degrees. But it just shows you that they can survive colder temperatures, but you can also move them into your shed or garage in the winter, and they can keep producing. So I've got the lid just to protect it, and then the first layer is a bit of carpet, which is a wool carpet, and it's just there to keep them warm. And then a layer of cardboard, and inside is the bedding. So this is newspaper. It's quite damp, which is good. It needs to stay quite damp. And then there's food scraps in there. And can you see any wrigglers? So they'll be running away from the light, but you can just see them here wriggling around, doing their thing.
Jenny, there is a question in the chat. Can you use this method to farm earthworms or just tiger worms?
Well, I did that. You need to, for this method is to produce the two products: the soil conditioner, which is the worm castings, and the liquid tea. And you do really need this type of worm for that. The tiger worms, they're known as, or brandlings or redworms, because they are the surface feeders. So they're the ones that digest the organic matter and break it down. And the earthworms are more what they bring the stuff down and incorporate it into the soil. So I'm sure there is a way of farming them, because you can buy them in bulk. But for this purpose, you need to have the tiger worms. So here is the tap here. So I've raised the whole thing up on, you can raise it up on bricks, and so that you can access the tap. And then you turn it on, and then you might need to tip it if there's not a lot in there to get your worm tea out. So every so often you can drain that off and dilute that kind of 1 to 10, and you can put it on your house plants or vegetable plants, nothing like that. Oops. So the layer, So this is the layer with the bedding and the food, and then underneath this has got holes underneath, so the liquid drains through. And I've got a little plant pot, or you could use a ceramic bowl or something, so that if the worms fall through, they can climb out of the liquid and not drown. And also these boxes are the type that fit together. They slide completely together. So in order to have some space underneath for the liquid to collect, you need to put something inside. So I've got 2 bricks in there just to lift this box up. So this is 2 boxes. And then once this level is full, that's when you bring in the 3rd box, which is identical to this one, and put that on the top, and you move the bedding and the worms and the food all up to the top. Well, you don't move the worms, you just put food in the top, and they migrate up into the top, leaving all the worm castings in this box. So that's how you harvest the worm castings. And I haven't got any to show you, but they're really, the worm castings are just really nice, very fine, crumbly, rich product. And it's great because of its fine texture, it's great for raising seedlings as well. So this is the one the new one I'm building. I'm just going to move this around here. And I decided to go for a smaller one this time, and actually keep it in the kitchen, on the kitchen worktop, because that'll be really handy for adding kitchen scraps. So I can just pop them straight in, and that should, in theory, they do not smell, and so you can keep them in the house. So we'll see how that goes. So I'll just show you how I've built it. So you need 3 boxes. I just bought these in B&Q. You can get all different sizes of box, and they're very cheap. But they do need to be black, because the worms hide from the light. They don't like the light. And you need a tap like this, which is, this one I got on Amazon, I think, and it's for water butts. So it's just a simple plastic tap. So you take off these 2 bits, and I've made a hole with a drill bit, just the right size for the tap. So I'm just going to ram it in. Right, and then you tighten these on inside. And that's basically the bottom layer. And so I'd pop a little pot or something in there for the worms, and something to raise up the next tub. So for this one, you need a drill bit about 1/4 inch, and you need to make lots of holes all over the bottom. And then you need a very thin drill bit to make breathing holes all around the top. And once I've done that, I usually find that there's bits of plastic sticking up which could hurt the worms. It's quite sharp. So if you've got big bits of plastic like this, you can pull them off. Or I actually got some nail clippers to just clip off the big chunky bits like that. And then you can give them a sand. Move it off and get the burrs off. And even these ones are a bit sharp. So then you do the exact same thing on the third box. And that will be the spare one. Okay, now for adding the bedding. So I've got some ripped up paper here. And I've soaked it in water. So I'm just going to put that bedding in, and you can rip up newspaper or cardboard. I probably need a bit more than that, just to put quite a thick layer on the bottom. So then you find some of the worms. So as I mentioned, you can find a friend who already has a worm farm, or I actually found a friend who had them in their compost heap. So the conditions of the compost heap were just right, and they had earthworms, but they also had the tiger worms. So I went and got loads from them, or you can order them. There's various companies online that will send them to you, like Wiggly Wrigglers is one of the ones I know about. So add this, add a few food scraps. So here I've got some eggshells, grape stalks. You can add a bit of cooked food, rice and pasta, and I've got coffee grounds, apple cores, and vegetable peelings. I'll just spread that in. Then you want a bit of soil from the garden, and this just adds some of the microorganisms and bacteria and some grit that the worms need for their digestion. Then we add the worms. So see if we can find some in here. They're running away from me. Okay, there's some in there. Oh yes, there's loads. Okay. So just in the instructions, it says add 250 grams of worms, but you might just have to do with what you've got, and they will. There's some babies there. Don't know if you can see the tiny baby, but they're reproducing, so that's good. If you ever get too many worms, you can start another wormery. Just you can't really have too many worms. Or give them to a friend to start up a new one. Or set up if you've got a shared space, it's even better because you can you've got more people who can give you food waste, and so it can get bigger and bigger. Right, I can't see if there's any questions or how much time we've got left.
Yeah, we do have some questions in the chat. I think Ian Sutherland asked, what types of worms is it you get in horse manure? I'll throw these few out to you and you can answer them in whichever order you like. What types of worms is it you get in horse manure? Alison was hoping to make the wormery with children in a nursery where she works. How safe is worm tea in those circumstances? And the third one we have is, can you add tea leaves to the wormery?
Yeah, tea leaves. Now, that reminds me, I was going to say what you shouldn't feed the worms. But I'll just talk about those questions. So like horse manure. I haven't actually, not exactly sure, but if they're small and red and wiggly, then they'll probably be the tiger worms. That would make sense to me, I think, because they're breaking down. So, yeah, they probably will be the red worms. And yeah, children are fascinated by worms. I think it's a great thing to do. I think, yeah, all schools and nurseries should have a worm farm. That's one of the other benefits of having them, is just they're quite interesting and educational, and can learn all about the worms and watch them. And the worm tea, I won't go drinking it because it is wee, but as long as you dilute it, usually 1 to 10 with water, it's very safe to put on plants. It's not like spraying chemicals or chemical fertilizers that you have to sort of keep in a secure place because they're poison. And yeah, so I was saying about what to feed them. Tea bags is great. Well, a good variety of things, and lots of small, if you can put them into small chunks, it's better, because they actually have no teeth to chew things, so they need it in smaller chunks. And they say avoid meat and citrus and onions, the onion family, just because they're too acidic for the worms and they don't like it. And avoid liquids, vinegar and anything like that. And if you've added too much food, it can go mouldy and go off, and that's when you might get a smell. So in that case, you just reduce the amount you're giving them, maybe take out mouldy stuff, and reduce the amount so they can just cope with how much you're feeding them. So Ian mentioned how to keep the worms happy. Is there anything specific you were wanting? Like, are there any specific problems you've had with the worms?
Yeah, more than me, Jennifer, is just the temperature, because, like I said, mine's is a large watering tank. So it's actually between the greenhouse and the fruit cage. And obviously because of the severe temperature difference, a few times, in the summer, I've actually had it where all the worms have died because it's got too hot. And in the winter, I've lost them all due to the cold spell. It dropped down to -9 last week, and actually that did freeze the whole entire system.
Really? Yeah. Even in the middle? Because I would imagine with something that size, I don't know if it becomes more like a compost heap, because they can become very hot in the middle, can't they?
Yeah, but I mean, as I said, because I use horse manure rather than actually buying worms, because the horse manure is twofold, because we can use it within the onward beds, obviously, but it is so jam-packed full of worms, and that is generally how I do it. But yeah, certainly twice I've lost them in my wormery, so I have, due to weather.
Yeah, I mean, it might also be a cap on the size. Maybe if it does get too big, then it does just heat up too much in the middle and sort of kills them. I'm not sure. I would have to look at that. But I have seen worm farms that exclusively deal with poo. So they're a bit. I mean, it's the same principle, but it's just dealing with poo. And there's one at the North Kelvin meadow that they tried for dog poo, so dog walkers could try and compost the dog poo with the worms. Yeah, so I
Jenny, sorry, could I ask a couple more questions that have come in? There's one related to that in terms of having how hardy wormeries are for outside in terms of what's the best temperatures and conditions. And for this example, the size that you're showing, what approximate yield of worm teas or castings would you get from a wormery of the size that you're just showing us? And would worms survive if I go on holiday? When we can go on holiday, obviously.
Yeah. Well, obviously it does vary according to the temperature, the weather, and what you're feeding them, and things like that. So how happy they are. But the optimum temperature is between 10 and 30 degrees. So they're going to be more busy at that time. At that temperature.
So is this are wormeries not appropriate then for outside outside building them outside, or do you have to do anything special for them?
So that's the temperature range that they're most productive. They're still going to survive. Like, you can definitely keep them outside, and maybe can try and insulate them if it does get cold with like bubble wrap. I put a carpet on top to try and keep them warm, or you can sort of wrap them in something to try and keep them warm, or keep them near a house, or put them in the shed or garage. But as I said, mine were outside, but they were near a house. Even in this cold snap, they did survive. They probably weren't very happy, but they did manage to survive.
We've got another question related to going on holiday. So I suppose, how do you take care of it, or how long can they go without being fed, or are there any special instructions for going on holiday and keeping the worms happy?
Yeah, they should be okay for being left for like 1 or 2 weeks. Just give them some food before you go, and they actually are quite low maintenance really to look after. So that's that's fine going on holiday.
And I see that Doreen is there with her virtual hand up. If we maybe make this the last question, just in the interest of time. Doreen, do you want to unmute yourself and go ahead?
Yeah. Well, you sort of semi-answered one of my questions the last time. I'm actually marooned in the Western Isles at the moment, and I have a wormery purely by chance in one of my Dalek compost heaps. The bramblings just appeared. It's fantastic. But because I'm not in Glasgow at the moment, I'm not able to feed them. And so should I be asking friends to go down and put their scraps into my Dalek for me?
They've just spontaneously arrived.
Yep. No, been there for 3 years. Just appeared. I have no idea where, how, or why, but they're lovely little things. And
then They must be it must be a good environment for them. So when was the last time they've had
months? It's been months. Well, before lockdown.
Because I think they will need, because as I said, they're surface feeders, breaking down organic matter. So they will need something, whether it's food scraps or green leaves or plants.
So basically, if I just ask some of my friends at the plots, one of whom is in the corner at the moment, if they could put some of their food scraps into the Dalek for me, that would help. That's fine.
It's just a question about the soil condition, about the worm castings, which I was just going to quickly mention. So it's absolutely great soil conditioner and adds lots of nutrients to the soil, and you can add it to potting mixes. So there's different ratios you can play around with, so you can add it to different composts and coconut fibre and things like that, just to enrich it and use it in different potting mixes. That's for indoor plants and outdoor plants. And as a seedling mix, it's nice and crumbly and fine for that. So it's the yield vary. I think that would once that fills up, it would take a few months to kind of get a good amount of the worm castings. So I'd say sort of probably half a tub in a year would be good.
Great. Well, thanks very much, Jenny. That's been really, really interesting. And it's our first, I'm trying to think ahead, I think maybe our only actual live demo of how to do something in FebFest. And we'll put the links of the resources that you shared into we'll email everybody who was here today with the links, and we'll also put it on the website as a sort of a post-session follow-up reading block in case anybody wants to refer back to it. As you said, the instructions are on the Propagate website under the educational resources, right?
That's right, yeah.
And it's also one of my favourite demonstrations I've seen recently, just for the very fact that part of the steps were ram it in when you were putting the tap into the hole. So that was very technical.
Was it?
So, thanks very much. We'll maybe also, I was going to say we'll put some contact details up on the website, but I guess you can be contacted through the Propagate website. Is that the easiest way for people to get in touch?
Yes, get in touch, have a look at our YouTube channel, and have a go. Hope to see lots of worm farms popping up everywhere.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thanks very much. If anyone else is joining us for the allotment activities session, we'll see you over there in 5 minutes. But otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day, folks. Thanks very much.
Thank you for coming. Bye.